All right, I'll allow it. All right. So again, welcome to our meetup. We're Women Who Code Greenville, and tonight's topic is our Greenville Repository, an overview of projects you can join. If you're new to Women Who Code, you should know that our mission is to empower diverse women to excel in technology careers. And we are global. Don't know if any of these slides say how many networks we're in, but we're in lots of different countries, over 150, I think, and lots of places in the US. Our vision is that the tech industry is where diverse women and historically excluded people thrive at every level. Our values are that we focus on the mission, remember why we're here and who we're here for. We design for inclusion, we make space, and we embody a culture of belonging. We advocate for change, we live leadership, champion each other, and as a community, we are powerful. And then journey forward, we recharge, celebrate wins, and break barriers. And here it is, 147 countries. I thought one of these would show 360,000 members. This is all growing. The countries are growing too, so I don't even know if this is fully up to date, but yeah. Women Who Code Network is huge, no matter the city you move to, or if you're maybe even joining from another city, you'll probably have a network near you. And the community has been really inclusive. I've been a member for about 7 years now, and I think Jen has at least that long, if not longer. And we've really grown and learned a lot from our peers here in the network. We are an inclusive community dedicated to providing an empowering experience for everyone who participates and supports our community. I'll let you read the rest, but if you do have any issues while you're attending a Women Who Code event, you can submit an incident response or email contact at womenwhocode.com. And then we also have a full code of conduct at womenwhocode / code of conduct. So Jen, I'm going to actually introduce Jen, but give me a second I think I just shared this tab, so I've made this very, very difficult. 1 second here. All right, so Jen Bauer is a lifelong technologist, builder, data storyteller, and educator. She is actually a QA engineer at Hungry Root, where she challenges internal APIs with Postman and her automated test suites. You may have seen her completing API testing challenges like the Ministry of Testing Test.Bash 2022 or 30 days of Postman for developers. She also attends conferences and shares all her tips and tricks always about QA, SQL, spreadsheets on YouTube or at live events. When she's not exploring what's up next in the world of tech, she enjoys playing and collecting video games across Nintendo consoles, spanning the Famicom to the Switch and all those in between, and delights in sharing those with her daughter, husband, cats, and good friends. So without further ado, I will go ahead and let Jen take it over.
Yay, thank you so much. What a wonderful intro. I do appreciate it. I could not ask for better. Well, thank you. Yes, I am Jen Bauer. Thank you so much for attending my event here. I'm just delighted to have so many of you come by just for a little story time. Honestly, we were doing so many different fun things with our repository. It just seemed like a shame to not just take a moment and have a little, just a little bit of time together, a little campfire, circle here, and just talk about what we've been doing, and just make sure that we made some time to explain a little bit and make sure it's a little bit welcoming, of course. So we want to make sure that that we let folks know what's going on and make that accessible. So without further ado, let me go ahead and I'm going to share my screen here and go ahead and make that. Let's go ahead and show you guys what's going on. Right. All right, here we go. So our little Greenville repository, just an overview of some projects you can join. So let's get started. Now let's talk about how we restarted our repository here. So this was not a clearing repository. This was not an empty repository. So we did have to have a little bit of a group discussion here about what we had and what we were working with, right? we had a meeting in September, and we were talking about, with the upcoming months and the holidays and things like that, what are some things that we wanted to do? And what were some things that we had available to us as a group, not just like resource wise, but like skill wise, like what kind of things could we talk about? Like, what are we all good at? What are the kinds of things that we want to share? So we're kind of brainstorming, talking about things that are going on, just what's going on that we have among us. And we thought about the repository, this little repository that's been hanging out within the Women Who Code global account. So all of the other networks also have their own repositories. So when we're done with our chat today, I highly recommend that you go take a look and see what's going on over there with some of the other networks, because it's definitely a variety of activities and projects that are going on outside of us as well. But the story today is about what we're doing over here in Greenville. So what we were working with, though, what we had, it was a previous Ruby project app. It was definitely something that hadn't been touched in a while. We're looking at the front page. It was missing social media links. We just had overall outdated content. There are no updates in years, and actually the last update was in 2019. So there was definitely some opportunity to just give the whole repository a glow up, honestly. So whatever we wanted to do, whether or not we wanted to, resurrect the Ruby app, or if we wanted to do some new things, it just felt like there was some opportunity here to just do something new, in whatever direction we wanted to go in. So that brings us to October. And that particular project that we went through is called Hacktoberfest. So let me tell you a little bit about what Hacktoberfest is, if you've never participated in one of these particular adventures or open source. So what in the world am I even talking about? Like, what is a Hacktober or a Hacktoberfest? It's a month of GitHub pull requests for learning. It's for fun, helping others, gaining experience, getting some more activity on your GitHub profile, whatever your motivations might be. There are just a lot of things you can do during that time. There's a separate webpage at hacktoberfest.com that tracks your progress, and it links to your GitHub profile activity, or GitLab. There is actually a whole nother site if you had that type of repository, if you're in that ecosystem, but we're talking about GitHub for the purpose of our story here. So users participate by completing at least one successful pull request that is approved and merged in, and that gets you a tree planted in your honor. But the challenge is actually to complete 4 pull requests. So what you want to do is actually, within some project somewhere, find some sort of work or some meaningful contribution that you can make that shows that you are either contributing to the project, or you're somehow either doing code or you're doing documentation, something that is going to be both added to the repository, it's reviewed, and then it actually gets merged in. I'm going to talk a little bit more about this process in a minute here. So the participating repositories need to have reviewers and some setup ahead of time to be able to be part of the festivities. So it's not something that just like all repositories everywhere are a part of. So there's a little bit of planning that's needed ahead of time if you want to be a part of this. So how did we set ours up? We had team members create projects during the month for folks to work on. And then when we then created issues for folks to take on, to work for those projects, or maintenance tasks, which could be completed through related pull requests. So we used issues as, if you're familiar with project management like Asana or ClickUp or Jira tickets, for example, you could think of this as a way of tracking that work in a way that we could put some sort of a description of the type of work that we were requesting, and then have that tied to the pull request. So it's a way of putting out into the universe, dear universe, I would like this kind of document made, or I would like this kind of change made. And then having a way that we could assign a person to that so that we could avoid having conflicts where, say, multiple people were working on the same thing, for example. It was just really some simple project management. So what did we do? So we had 2 reviewers. It was myself and Kara, who is just hosting just now. We helped review pull requests to confirm that the work matched the request in the issue. And we would also give feedback if there was a concern that we had, or if there was more information that we needed, things like that, to try to make sure that we kept the integrity of the repository and, we kept things in alignment for what we were looking for. We also made sure that the pull request had the required Hacktoberfest accepted label, merged it into the repository after the review completed successfully. So that little label was our connective tissue to this Hacktoberfest project. And that's the way that your profile and everything else would connect up to the good work that you're doing, and the fact that it was completed and merged in, and would go back essentially and update back to your profile that you had been successful. So I'll tell you, as a reviewer, I checked on this a lot, especially towards the end of the month. It's not like a paid gig or anything like that, but I got into it. And I, especially towards, because this was just from October 1st to October 31st, like, I wanted to make sure that folks were getting in their PRs and the things that they were doing, and it was applying to their accounts. So, like, as the month went on, I definitely was just checking more and more to be like, I don't want anyone to miss anything. If they're making the effort to do all these different types of requests, I want to make sure that they get the challenge complete and all that sort of good stuff. So it definitely was starting to take a little more time than I expected as it went on. So let me tell you about how it went. We had a lot of issues that we generated during October, and we actually had a lot of folks jump in even outside of the Greenville group. So we had folks just from around the world who jumped in, not even necessarily ladies. We just had lots of different folks who wanted to jump in and do different issues and help out, which is pretty cool. In addition to maintenance tasks for the repository, we have 4 new projects that are created that can still be contributed to today. So I'm going to talk about those in just a little bit. We had 28 merged pull requests for Hacktoberfest 2023. So that, I don't know exactly how many people that covered, but it covered quite a few. I know it definitely covered for me, but it definitely, covered for many folks on the team, so they were able to complete the challenge. Let's talk a little bit about some lessons learned. Now, this is my little retrospective section. I'm going to say this only represents my opinion. This is not the opinion of Greenville Women Who Code or anything like that. This is entirely just my own takeaways here. So you're welcome to take it with a grain of salt. But I just wanted to reflect for a minute here, because this is a really interesting experience. And I don't think setting up a repository quite like we did is something that one does every day. So I think there's just really some interesting takeaways here. So let's talk a little bit about the good stuff. I think it was great that we went for it. The repository was just hanging out for so long and really didn't have any activity. It also is helping our network get back into the groove of just having more community involvement. We had a lot of folks who were newer leads, myself included. I've actually been with the Greenville Network, as Kara was saying, for many years, but I'm new to the role of being a lead. So I did want to just be, giving more events and things like that, and, helping out a little bit more in that capacity. So it was great for me to be able to do that. But we want to do more things that are front and center. So that I think this was great to just have another activity that we were doing since we all kind of got started up again. We also, since we decided at the end of September or so to do this, we spun up a couple of things very quickly that I think were very helpful. We spun up a Notion document with some steps about what we needed to do to participate. We also spun up a Slack channel so that those of us who were involved could chat with each other quickly. There were also some README updates, and then later in the month, I also turned on the wiki in the GitHub for the repository. So we have a lot of great documentation that we didn't have before. And we had enough folks who were in key roles early on to make it possible to succeed. So the fact that we had the reviewers, I think, helped a lot. We also had a couple of folks who just jumped in as participants very early. And I'm so grateful that we had that. So that helped us get into the groove and kind of figure out how things worked very quickly, and helped us iron out our processes. So I think that was immensely helpful. So for that, I think we did a lot of things pretty awesomely. So let's talk a little bit about some of the things that might have been, we'll say, opportunities, some of the things that maybe we could learn from here. We didn't decide to join Hacktoberfest until close to the beginning of October, like super late December. So there wasn't much time to get everything ready. We tried to throw together a really quick checklist of what we thought we needed, but we ended up needing to cook up more documentation and iron out our processes as we went. We really were doing a little bit of trial by fire, honestly. We didn't really get to set up a lot of events that we wanted to do over the course of the month to actually just have our faces on an event and say hi. We've got office hours, or just explaining even right now, like the way I am about the repository. We wanted to do more things like this actually during October, but there was just too much going on, I think, at the time. We weren't able to coordinate that at the moment. So we didn't start off with detailed process instructions in place, so we confused our participants, and I think ourselves at some times. Definitely, I'll say, there's a lot of documentation that I revised many times. So I'm glad that at least I spun up some things pretty quickly initially, but there were just a lot of things that I think would have been helpful to have in a more polished state earlier on, or even if we could have potentially tried to have maybe some projects set up in September ahead of this, I think possibly could have been more helpful, just to sort of iron things out, I think, a little earlier ahead of starting in October. Another thing that I think was a bottleneck for us was having, we really only had 2 reviewers who were actually in the repository for the majority of the month. If we could have gotten more reviewers, I think that would have been helpful for us, just so we could have had, just more people in there who are comfortable and able to approve things and move things along. And I think going forward, if there are more folks who are interested, that would be awesome. But I know we also need to work through some of the standards that we'd like to have for the repository as well. So I think once we have more of that foundational process sorted, I think having more reviewers is a solid next step, and it'll help not just for the next Hacktoberfest, but any other projects that we want to have going forward. I think it'll help tremendously. Oh yes, and of course October was it was a rough month for a lot of folks, just timing wise. So if we could have moved Oktoberfest to another month, I think to February or something, I think we could have prepared it well. But Hacktoberfest wouldn't be Hacktoberfest unless it was October. So there you go. So here's some of my absolutely unsolicited advice if you are to come jump into a Hacktoberfest, whether it's with us or any other time that you might want to join into something like this or another open source sort of collaborative adventure here. Onboard more reviewers and project leads if you can. Start projects prior to whenever your collaborative period is, if you can. As early as you can is best. If you can create your documentation ahead of time for the projects and your repository processes, it's definitely going to help you as early as you can on that too. And having events at the beginning, middle, and the end for participants to get acclimated or get assistance, I think is key. And if possible, if you can have social media posts to just get the word out in advance, that's awesome. I did try to throw a couple of posts out there, but honestly, I realized kind of after the fact, I was like, oh, I didn't post about XYZ, a couple of times. And I was really kicking myself for that one. But anyway, those are all lessons learned, and you can always do better in the next round. So now we've talked about Hacktoberfest, it's time to talk about our current projects. So real simple, I'm going to say, it's going to be silly to say a README file. Jen, really? That's a project? Yes, it was a project. Yes, there was quite a bit of revising that went into this. There was quite a bit of discussion back and forth about the way we organize the information that we have in here, getting our social media and our information up to date. Actually, quite a few contributors on this one. So this is the main page when you go to our repository. I will say that this is in Markdown. So if this is something that we have an issue for and you wanted to contribute to, if you're not all that experienced with code, and this is something that you wanted to just get your feet wet and get comfortable, this is a great way to start. So I highly recommend taking a look at anything related to documentation like the README file. So now I'm going to tell you about some other Markdown related projects that we have here. So another project here that we have, one of the projects that I started is what's called interactive fiction. And in this case, it's a choose your own adventure story. This one is called API Antics, and it is about a developer who runs into trouble with an endpoint that gives it unexpected responses. And in this particular case, you can contribute to this story through the repository. So I'm going to actually take a break here from the presentation and show you a little bit of what this looks like within the repository itself. So you just have kind of an idea of how you would be able to contribute. So I'm on the main page here of our GitHub repository, and you can take a look at the last update was like the README file. And you can see here the main page. Now I'm in dark mode here, which is not doing it justice. So that's my bad here. But we're going to go ahead and move over to the Hacktoberfest folder here. And I'm going to take a look at API Antics folder. And then the first file here is the start chapter 1.md, which is a markdown file. So this first file is the first chapter of this particular story. So the way that you would add to this is that there are issues for all of the available chapters that have not been written. And if you want to add a chapter, you can essentially assign one of the issues to yourself or request one of the issues, and you can add in the markdown file for one of those chapters. So I'm going to show you the end of this chapter because I think it will help. I don't want to give you any spoilers to the story or anything, but the idea is that you can have 2 or more choices at the end of every chapter, and simply depending on what you choose for the character to do, you're going to go to another chapter. So chapter 3, for example, is not written, but if we go down to chapter 2, we do have more story here. And then we could go to chapter 4, chapter 5. And chapter 5 is not written, but I believe chapter 4 is. So we could see more of what happens down that route. So depending on what is written in the story, you have more options that you can take. I have this little bullet list here so that you can, as more chapters are written, you essentially just put in a note here about what's written and then, what can be added to it. So we can just add to this as we want to go. I'm going to go to issues, and you can see up here, I have some tagged issues here for things that are recent and interesting. So you can see here, like interactive fiction, add to API Antics, choose your own adventure story experiment chapter 3, like, this is available, no one has taken it yet. So if you wanted to, you could go ahead and take this. You can offer at least 2 choices, but if you want to offer more, you can totally do that. And it shows you what you need to do in terms of updating that file. And then if you want to go ahead and add more chapter files and updating it. So essentially you're setting it up for another author to be able to contribute to this story if you'd like to do so. There's also the option, of course, depending on what's going on, if you want to create a dead end, you could definitely do that as well. So as we get to later chapters, maybe we'll want to do that at different points also to create, you know, some surprises as well. So there you go. So that's the API antics story. We do want to also, I'll make a note here as well, if we go back to this, we like to have who the authors are and if they use ChatGPT or anything else to help them. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. So we've had a mix for this particular story. There's another story I'm going to show you in a moment as well. And some folks have chosen to have some help and some haven't. So, you know, there's no pressure either way. It's just kind of fun to do one way or the other. So it's all about having fun, honestly. It's no stress either way. All right.
Jen, I just want to cut in real quick. Did you want to wait till the end to address anything in the chat?
Yeah.
So,
You know,
okay.
Yeah, good question. Yeah, I will wrap up the projects and then we'll cut the recording and then we'll do our question.
That's absolutely fine. I just wanted to make sure I didn't like lose any, you know, context of someone's question, but I think we're good.
Sounds good. All right, let's do it. Let's go ahead and get back in. All right. Here we go. So here's our debug mansion here. So this is the other story that I wanted to share with you guys here. Now, this one does not have any branching. It is just an interactive fiction story, and that is simply just collaborative. So all this is just folks jumping in and just writing a chapter at a time. So super simple. You just pretty much just write a chapter and then hand off the next one, and that's it. So it's a much simpler format to what we were looking at with the API antics, where, you know, the chapters are branching. So this is hopefully much less intimidating if the other format maybe is looking a little wild. So definitely something that you can jump into. This is also Markdown as well. So the formatting looks great in the browser and you don't really need to do a heck of a lot to make it look good. All right, so the other project that I wanted to share with you guys here is the Events API, the Postman test suite. So here is your Postman moment here if you were waiting for it. This is a very simple and small API test suite that was built from a Postman collection, and it's built to test a Hack Greenville API endpoint, which is their events API. This API just essentially aggregates from a couple of different calendars and from Meetup, a couple of different spots, just to make sure that we've got all the things that are related to Greenville and our related groups all in one place for their calendar. So just to show you guys a little bit of what that looks like. Here we go. So I'm going to do this get events. We'll hit send on this, and I'm going to show you a little bit of what this request looks like. Giving Tuesday, empowering women who code. Oh, it's us. It's us here, right here, hanging out. Our Greenville Repository, the overview. So here's our event where you guys are right now, hanging out. Everybody who RSVP'd, our description, all this sort of good stuff is right here. And then I'm going to show you some of the tests that we have started to add to this. So it's just super simple. Just checking that the response is a 200 okay. And apologies if you are not an API testing person. I'll try to simplify this a little bit here, but we're just testing essentially that we're able to talk to this particular API, that it's not taking too long to respond to us. And we're checking for a little bit of the data format that's in here, that it has some things that we expect. So we've just started to add some of these tests, which are called assertions. So in doing so, we essentially have exported this little collection here, and I'll show you what this looks like on the GitHub side. So we took this out of Postman, and it is a JSON file, and we brought it over to the repository. And then what we do is we run it using this command line version of Postman known as human. And then you can run it as a GitHub action. So it actually runs from the repository, and we can run it on a schedule. So we can have control over it that way. And we've been doing some pretty cool things. Like we've been working on the reporting output, and just, you know, adjusting some things that way. So we've been really toying around with this and just seeing what we can do. So it's been pretty cool seeing what's possible here. Just seeing if output summary console, let's see. Excellent. And actually these are all successful. That's why we've got all these green check marks here. So everything's looking good. We haven't had any failures. So everything's been running the way that we expect it to for quite some time now. So everything's like looking pretty good for this. This is also in this Women Who Code Greenville API training. This is a public workspace, so you can fork this if you want to mess with this or any of these other collections from previous sessions that I've shared with them in, you know, previous sessions. You're always welcome to take a look here. If you're new to API testing, you know, feel free to enjoy that and take a look. But this is essentially what we've been updating and then exporting to the repository. Now, I've been telling you guys about all these different things we have in the repository, but I haven't shown you any of the issues yet. So we did just take a look here at the API Antics chapter issue here, and we took a look at this for a brief moment. This has some labels, so if there are more issues related to a particular project, we do try to have some grouping here, so it's a little easier for you to find what you're looking for. If you want to look for things maybe related to documentation, for example, you could do that. Actually, I'll go ahead and clear these and just do documentation by itself. And actually, we only have one at the moment, but we've had plenty. Yep, we've had others for the README and all sorts of things, Hacktoberfest. So there have been plenty of others as well. So you've got plenty to take a look at here. And actually, if you just click on issues, it'll show you the items that are open right now that are available for you. So there you go. All right, let's get back here. So the one last place I wanted to show you that was part of updating all of these projects is within this repository wiki. This is something that you can turn on with your repository optionally in GitHub. And it's just literally just a markdown wiki, and you can have additional documentation about any projects that you have. So I've made sure to have some additional documentation about all of these different projects that we have, including Hacktoberfest itself, so that we have just some, you know, additional context here on how to do things. From the README page itself, also, we have additional info on like how to get started with the repository and how to contribute. So we do have just documentation in a couple different directions to make it a little more comfortable in whichever way is easier for you. So, all right, I'm going to wrap it up. I know I've been chatting for a while. I know you guys got questions, so I will get going here. So yes, you are welcome to join us. We are at Women Who Code / WW Code Greenville. So feel free to jump in. So thank you for hanging out with me for a little bit of story time here. I hope that was interesting or maybe a little bit insightful, or at least a little bit fun, you're welcome to catch up with me anytime on the internet. I'm on Blue Sky, Mastodon, Threads. I'm on LinkedIn, or feel free to email me anytime. All right, thank you very much.
Yay, thank you, Jen. We really appreciate all of that insight. And so I definitely did not want to interrupt Jen while she was giving that overview of our October and how we just threw ourselves into Hacktoberfest, and we started with a really old repo and how we ended up. And we definitely have so far to go. We have so many projects we want to create. We'd love for people just all over to contribute. We definitely did get contributors that were far outside of our network. We don't know these people at all. They just found our labels and started contributing. It was really fun. And as busy as Jen and I both are in our regular lives outside of Women Who Code, we still I think we both kind of enjoyed taking the time to review pull requests, which we weren't new to that, but just reviewing them for our own, repository that we built up almost from the ground up. So we can't stop recording. So thank you for setting that up. Hopefully we can get this uploaded, share with the wider Women Who Code Greenville community.
Yeah,
and go through.
I'll hit the button.
Yeah, take your time.